This is a HeadGum podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Jeff Rubin Show. Today on the Skype-o-phone is games designer Myles Nye. Welcome to the show, Myles.
Thanks for having me.
Myles, I think probably the main thing you've done that I really want to hear about today is your work with the TV show Survivor and working on games on Survivor. But before we get there, I was thinking maybe let's establish a timeline into how you got to Survivor. How does one become a games designer, and how long have you been doing it?
I started my company, Wise Guys Events, in 2009 with my partner, Greg, and it's been my full-time job ever since. And I had some experience before that as a game designer working for a company in San Francisco, the Go Game. And prior to that, my background was theater. I went to UCLA Theater School to study to become a stage performer. And I've always been interested in theater games. In fact, one of the things I do when I'm not working, my hobby, the only sport that I participate in is comedy sports. Do you know the show? There's comedy sports teams in a lot of cities around the U.S. and international, and it's the longest running show in L.A.
Yeah, I'm familiar. It's improv, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, it's fast comedy improv that's suitable for everyone. And I've been doing that show for 14 years. So that's a game that I've been playing for a long time. And so theater and games and playfulness with a performative element, and performance with a playful element. I'm just well suited for the work. The work that I did for the SF company showed me that there's an appetite for this kind of engagement.
So what was that work? Because that was sort of the first thing on your resume with the word game in it.
Yeah, safe to say that's right. So we wrote cell phone scavenger hunts for corporate team building clients. I did all the work in Southern California and then did traveling, and it's still a very strong company doing a lot of different kind of games work. And so I cut my teeth there before handing out my own shingle.
And how did you get into that? Like, what was the leap from theater into the game? I guess the game, if it's a scavenger hunt, maybe there's like some performance element to that.
That's right. Yeah. So I had some experience, in addition to, it was interesting, like learning more about that work with, working as part of another team. Cause I'd put on, game-like experiences for my friends, sometimes as a kid, or, fabricating tabletop games, board games, but just with cutting things out of paper and all with pencil illustrations and a lot of text. I crammed a lot of text into the board games that I made as a kid.
So you were making so I lied a little. I was not correct when I said the first thing on your resume with the word game was this company in San Francisco. It sounds like you've been doing this since you were very young.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, all kids play, right? Everybody plays in their own way.
Yeah, and I think even all kids make up games, right?
Yeah.
Like if you throw a rope at like 6 kids, they will have 4 games for it within 20 minutes. But not all kids design their own board games and make up and like actually formalize the rules. And that sounds like what you were doing.
In a kid-like way, yeah.
So what games were you into when you were a kid? Do you have any idea what put you on this path?
Yeah, my introduction to alternative games was my friend Ian, who gave me James Ernest's Kill Dr. Lucky. That was the first game I'd ever played that was sort of off the beaten track. Prior to that, I would play games like I'd play the Game of Life and Mousetrap and play those games a bunch as a kid because I didn't know that there were kind of other options available. And playing that game opened my eyes to all kinds of new and exciting games. And I still love pretty much everything James Ernest makes.
Very briefly, because I do want to get to Survivor, but it's so interesting to me that you remember this one specific game as really igniting your interest. So I'm curious, what was it about that game that made it so special?
It was... It mirrored real life so well. When I was in theater school, we read Aristotle's The Poetics, and he said, and I'm sort of paraphrasing my teacher here, that looking at a cloud and going, hey, that one looks sort of like a goat, that one looks like a tractor wheel, is sort of a universally pleasurable experience. And that's what there's the same kind of pleasure that we get from watching theater. Aristotle didn't write plays, but he wrote about them and what he thought made them appealing and why audiences engaged with live theater. And so you look at a king who has terrible trouble with his family and you go, oh, that's like me. I have terrible trouble with my family. And like, you're not a king any more than a cloud is a tractor wheel, but it's pleasurable to identify those analogies and make those connections for yourself. The way in which something that's real, that touches us, that's specific to us, brings delight. We see it in improvisation, like Keith Johnstone in his book, Impro, writes about how if an improviser tries to give a nutty, kooky answer to a straightforward question like what's for dinner, it's always going to seem like it was something planned or it was asynchronous, and the audience is sort of unimpressed. But you get laughs just by giving straight up answers like it's fish for dinner, which doesn't seem like a joke, but people go, hey, that's like my life, and it's a laugh of recognition. So I got that kind of laugh or pleasure of recognition when I looked at this James Ernest board game, Kill Dr. Lucky.
Yeah, how did you get? What about that game gave you that feeling?
It's a game. It's like Clue, but instead of solving the murder, you're committing it. It's midnight at this old man's house, and all these guests are there, and they all want to kill him for their own reasons. You can make up your own reason as part of the game, and he's ambling around the house. Just aimlessly, and if you can get him alone with no witnesses who can see you, you can try to kill him. But if there's somebody in an adjacent room, you can't make a murder attempt. And even if you can get him alone and try to kill him, even if you've picked up a weapon around the house that's going to help you, he's really lucky, and so he can escape your murder attempts all the time. Like you raise up a frying pan to hit him over the head, and then you hear an ice cream truck drive by, and you get distracted, and he gets away. That kind of thing happens on every turn. It's like a prisoner's dilemma game. That's what makes it a cool game that you can play and win and strategize about. But the experience of playing it is fun and pleasurable. I've never walked through a mansion trying to kill an old man, but now I don't have to because I've done the simulated version in the game.
Okay, so you obviously have a lifelong interest in games, and then you worked with the San Francisco company, and then you went and started your own gaming company. When was that?
2009.
And what was the impetus behind that? Like, most people don't really. I think most people don't meet game makers or interact with game making companies. So, what is this company?
Wise Guys Events, we specialize in creating real-life games of all different kinds, like Survivor challenges. As you know, we've designed challenges for Survivor, but we've also done high-end interactive team-building events for clients like Apple and Google and Nike and Disney, and they love our games because their teams have so much fun playing them that they don't even notice that they're accomplishing something.
And now let's start to dig into Survivor a little. When did you start watching Survivor? Since the beginning?
Since the beginning. I came on partway into season 1. By the end of season 1, I was absolutely obsessed.
Well, that's kind of the fun thing about Survivor is everyone was obsessed by the end of season 1. That was like 2000, I want to say, and it was like a real pop culture phenomenon. What do you remember about that? Like, what was your first reaction to it?
It was a juggernaut. What was my first reaction to it? It was really tied up with the summer camp that I was working then. Like a lot of people who are now in game design, I did a lot of summer camp work when I was younger. You sustain and nurture the playfulness of, the younger age as you're transitioning into a young adult. And this summer camp that I was a counselor at, we all watched Survivor together. And I know a lot of people who had like their viewing group who they watched Survivor with, and that was a big part of the pleasure, because the show is about how groups get together in different ways. So I really liked the show, and I thought there was no way in the world that Richard Hatch could win, and we all know how that turned out.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned he won, by the way, for those that aren't familiar with Survivor, but it's funny you mentioned the group viewing, because that really is my experience with Survivor. I have to admit to both you and the listeners that I don't really keep up with the show anymore, but I was really into it in 2000. That was when I went to college, and I remember, like, one of my earliest college memories is like watching Survivor in a group, because that was like, it was ending. It was over the summer, so it was like ending as the school year was starting. One of my earliest college memories was watching TV with my friends, and I've sort of fallen off a little bit since then. Though I like Survivor so much that like I still kind of keep an eye on it and vaguely aware of what's going on. But for those that don't watch Survivor, because this is a confusing point, the games you make, like you don't win a game, like a challenge on Survivor and then win $1 million. The challenges are just a piece of the overall Survivor game. So can you explain like how the challenges work within the show, just so people know what we're talking about?
Sure, yeah. So one of the things that makes Survivor, I'm a huge fan of the show and the game. I love the way the game is designed, and I love the way it's played. I like the classic iterations.
Mm-hmm. We're talking about the overall game here.
Yeah, you get 16 or so people on an island, and they take turns voting each other out until one person wins by getting enough votes from the jury made of people that he or she played against. That game. That game has been played for American TV 32 times now.
Wow.
Yeah, and international versions, I don't even know how many.
Okay, so where do these challenges come in?
Okay, so here's the structure of an episode of Survivor. At some point, there is going to be an immunity challenge, and the immunity challenge might be for the tribes, or it might be for individuals. So the first, episode 1 of Survivor will be a tribal immunity challenge. And likewise for episode 2 and so on. Around episode 6 or 7, all the tribes, all the players who are left merge and become one tribe. And from that point, all immunity is individual. But before we get to that, what is a tribal immunity challenge? Where the players are broken up into groups, 2 or 3 groups. Every once in a while, 4. You got, 4 to 10 people on each tribe. And they're going to play against each other in some kind of game. It might be physical. If it is, it'll probably have a mental component. Like in its most basic element, run through this obstacle course, collecting bags of puzzle pieces, and when you get to the end, solve the puzzle. Because when you're making a TV show that's supposed to have an exciting finish, the opportunity for somebody to use the puzzle as a catch-up and come from behind and win, it makes for exciting TV. And that happens lots of times. There's many episodes you can point to where the person who is in dead last at the puzzle wins. And so that can be really exciting pretty much every time. And then sometimes it's just a blowout. But anyhow, so if your tribe wins immunity, that means everybody on your tribe is safe. The other one or more of the other tribes have to go to tribal council and vote somebody out. Whoever gets the most votes is eliminated from the game. They don't play anymore. And then sometime in the next couple of days, there'll be another immunity challenge, and so on. You with me so far?
Yeah, I'm with you.
And then once they merge and it becomes individual, there'll be a challenge like run a race, and whoever is the fastest has individual immunity, and every player goes to tribal council. Somebody gets voted out, but the person with individual immunity who shows it by wearing a symbolic necklace, that person cannot be voted out. You can't write that person's name down. It's not allowed.
So by winning one of these games, you protect yourself, you have immunity, and you are safe in the overall game for another week.
That's right. There's 2 ways to be safe in Survivor. You can win by your skill. If you get immunity for your tribe or for yourself, then you can't be voted out. And if that fails, if you don't have enough skill to succeed at the challenge, whatever it might be, then you've got to count on your social acumen. Are you in the majority with enough people who want to vote for somebody else? Are there enough people who are not going to vote for you that you can keep playing? And as long as you can keep doing some balance of those things, you will stay in the game all the way to the end. And you might even win.
Okay, so what exactly have you done for the TV show Survivor?
So I was part of a team that sat in a writer's room to design the challenge agenda for the season before the season began.
And what's a challenge agenda?
That's not a real...
Gotcha.
Like, if you ever watch a TV show, like they did this on 30 Rock, any show about a show, they have cards on the wall. Can you picture this? Like some people are looking at index cards on a wall and they're moving them around.
Yep.
So that's a real thing. And we're putting cards on a wall that represent how many challenges do we need for individual, how many do we need for tribe. And there's all these characteristics that make a challenge good or bad. And so we're just coming up with ideas. And maybe the idea is, hey, here, let's do something we've done before that worked. Or it's, what are we going to do that's going to be new and that the contestants are not going to see coming and that the viewers are going to be pleased by? Because whatever it is, it's going to edit down to about 7 minutes. And there are some people who, avowedly state that they just bloop, bloop, bloop through the challenges each week. I don't get that, but that's fine. I'm tolerant of that. And there's some people who really look forward to it for a variety of reasons, either because it's fun to see great athletes do their thing when you have players like Ozzy and Tyson and Aubrey from this recent episode, great athletes doing what they're best at. That's fun. And some people really like the host, Jeff Probst. He does this ongoing patter. He's narrating the competition as it's happening, and sometimes in a very wry way. And his contributions actually really increase the excitement and the entertainment. So that's what you can look forward to when you watch a Survivor Challenge.
Before we get into that room, let's step out for the room for a second. How did you get into the room? Because this is something, I mean, as a games maker and someone who's clearly obsessed with Survivor, this must have been a big deal for you. How did this come to be?
Well, it was, I'm pretty sure it was 2008 is what my wife tells me, that I've been watching Survivor, for 8 years, and I had these ideas about variations on challenges that I really loved and ways they could do it that were a variation. And so I found out that somebody I knew through work was this woman, Sarah, and she was part of the Survivor team, and she was affiliated with casting, with medical, and she gave me the email address for the challenge producer on the show. His name is John Kerhofer, and I cold called him basically, and he gave me an opportunity to come in and interview in a consulting position. Which, I mean, the email that I sent, it was. It was just a couple sentences long. I said, I'm a huge Survivor fan. I have some ideas regarding challenges. Do you want to sit down sometime and have a conversation? Because I'm in LA too. It took me 8 years to realize that this TV show was in LA, when that's kind of like a duh, because most TV shows are almost all are here. So he called me and he said, I got your email. Yeah, I got your email. I don't understand. Do you want a job? And that, I mean, I hadn't even thought that was on the table. But he, put together a resume and sent it over, and he brought me in for an interview, and I pitched some of my ideas, and they invited me back to consult. So I sat in the room and, listened and brought the ideas that I sort of cooked up. And the first season that I contributed to was Survivor China, and I've worked on, since then, more seasons than not.
Do you remember any of the ideas that were in your packet, as it were? Any of the things you had seen that you had ideas on how to improve? And if so, can you share them with us?
An idea that didn't move forward, but was sort of a twist, was that doing an obstacle course with their clothes. It was like a variation of the marooning. If you want to put all your clothes on and then run through this water obstacle course, you can, and then you'll get to keep them if you win. But if they are slowing you down, once you start with them, you've got to finish with them. So how much of these bags you packed, how much of it are you willing to leave on the beach? That didn't move forward, but what I did say at the time was, I love the instances where you've had them build practical props out of puzzle pieces. I remember there have been a number of instances of puzzle ladders that they then use as a utility, and then they assemble puzzle boats. I think that was in the Cook Islands. And I said, what would be interesting to see would be puzzle wheels that you then put on a cart, and then you use those same wheels later to turn a winch or something along those lines. I did a pencil sketch of it. And that actually, a variation on that John and Dan Mundy, who is in the art department, what they put together was the first immunity challenge of Micronesia, season 16, fans versus favorites. And that challenge was called Reinventing the Wheel. And it was the challenge that sent the favorites to the first tribal council, where John Dalton, Johnny Fairplay, was voted out.
Oh, I remember Johnny Fairplay. He was on the show when I was watching it.
Yeah, and he's such a notorious baddie. So I like to say that my contribution led to something that got Johnny Fairplay voted out of his All-Star season. So I'm not actually taking credit for that, but I like to sort of round myself up to that, pad my resume a bit.
All right, so put me in this room. blank whiteboard, blank cards. We're starting from nothing. We want to make a challenge. Where do we start?
There's so many things that can make a challenge not work. But I hate to dwell on the negative. It's better to sort of, I'm a very positive person by nature.
I'm picking up on that.
Try to think of all the things that are reasons to shoot down a challenge and try to find a way to phrase them in the positive.
Okay.
First and foremost, the challenge has got to have a great name. That's it. We spend a large fraction of the day coming up with names for the challenges, and if they reference classic rock songs, that's always really good. And if they aren't, because that's John's taste. You can't go wrong with the Eagles. There was a lot of talk about the Eagles, and we talked about Bowie during this most recent cycle because we lost such giants from the rock community. But somehow we mourn, and yet we hold our heads high and soldier on, coming up with variations on mazes, obstacle courses, and puzzles. So naming a challenge is a big characteristic.
I gotta say, I don't even know where the name is shown. Is it kind of like, is there a cryon, like it's a music video at the beginning of the challenge?
No, Jeff, that's an excellent question. The name of the challenge is not spoken.
Next question, I guess, kind of, who cares to a degree? Why is that the first thing that came to mind, right?
Boy, yeah, you can make a case for that.
Sorry, not to turn hostile. I'm just wondering why it matters.
You're asking the hardball questions. I can take it.
You came on the Jeff Rubin show, my friend. This is a hardball show.
I'm sweating here.
Sorry.
No. Here's why. Because it's part of the same process that's gotten us this far. So it's a good thing we keep it going.
That's fair.
A big part of my there's so much that I don't know about how the show is made because I don't work on location. Of course, right. Location is always in some wonderful place around the world, and the work that I do is right here in LA. This is it's a company town, same as Hershey, Pennsylvania. Or Milwaukee, and what we make here is TV, and so I go into this pre-production facility where we have a conference room, and we do, just like you said, we sit around with the whiteboard and the cards on the wall, and then on location, all this all this magic happens, this big machinery that I don't have any hand in. In addition to being the captain of the team of the challenge consultants, like John's job here on location before he goes to location is he's got to have things in place. Is there going to be a crew there to build the maze because that takes a long time? Not that you see a maze in every season. They kind of take every season off. It seems like take every other season. It seems like. But also, he's talking with us consultants and saying, here's what's really tough is individual immunity challenges for 13 people, 12 people, 11 people, 10 people, 9 people. These are hard to pick. Then once he gets on location, he's the captain of the Dream Team. And the Dream Team is a group of young people. Some of them are local in the location that they're shooting. A lot of people on the Dream Team want to work in television. And some of them are young people from around here who get to go on location and sleep in some pretty cramped quarters, I'm pretty sure, and work on the production. Sometimes they're in these prefab shelters that are purchased from China and on location. And their job is to, they're John's team, and they're going to help fabricate the challenge. If there's a million tiles that need to get smashed in the slingshot challenge, the Dream Team is helping the art team paint those. But they are also the team that gets to pick up the slingshot and try the challenge, practice it, play it. Before the contestants do, make sure that there isn't some sort of loophole or way that it can be outfoxed. And so they are professional challenge testers on location. So that's a very exciting, very coveted thing to do. I don't. So if they're out there, because the one of the things, and I may be skipping around a little bit here, but I'm going to bring it back.
Please, yeah.
one of the another reason, Survivor gets to shoot in all these great locations, they seem to really leave a great impression on the places where they go, and they clean up everything behind them. And a lot of that, I feel pretty sure this is not based on inside information, but you think that would be good business sense from like a liability. If you leave a piece of a trampoline that was in an immunity challenge in a field and somebody falls down on it and they find out that it was Survivors and they want to sue CBS. So leaving the place, clean is good.
Yeah, especially because there are these like beautiful locations, like these spectacular beaches. Like you couldn't leave shattered painted tiles everywhere.
Exactly right. And so when there's a tile smashing challenge that happens in the ocean and these fragments of pottery sink down to the bottom of the ocean floor, who picks out every shard? It's the dream team.
Wow.
So that's a big undertaking. And if you are working in 110 degrees to do a job like that, maybe it's going to take one little thing to kick you in the pants, and if it happens to be the rock and roll song that is the name of the challenge that you're working on that gives you that last impulse to dig through because somebody blasts it, on the iPod dock, then maybe that's why there's so much time spent on naming the challenges.
Wow, you did bring that around. I forgot what we were talking about even. I'm impressed. You should be hosting this show.
No, I like being a guest.
Okay, so now that we're back, let's talk more about that kind of blank page problem. Like, so we need a good name, but where does the substance come from? Where do you guys draw inspiration from?
I really like the comment that you said a moment ago, where if you throw some kids a piece of rope, they'll make up a bunch of games for it. Honestly, that kind of thing is a great place to start. You can't go wrong having a challenge be bone simple. Because you just elevate it and you build up the stakes, and it can become really dramatic and gladiatorial.
But I bet simplicity is hard, because if you've played the game 32 times, I think you said, and each season has 18 challenges in it or whatever. I imagine simplicity is difficult, is what I'm saying. It's like that quote, if I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter. I imagine it's harder. It's harder to do the simpler ones, isn't it?
Totally, it is. And there's things can, if they have to, if they get tested. Late in the game and there's not an opportunity to swap it out. Sometimes something errors that it doesn't turn out great. But overall, the challenge profile across the 32 seasons is a smash. But your question, simplicity is hard. So okay, so where do you start? I mean, like I said, these sort of negative things I'm trying to phrase as the positive. You have to take those into consideration. It's got to be something that everybody can participate in. I mean, everybody who gets on the show has a certain base level of physical fitness. There's people on the show who are clearly athletes, and there's people on the show who have kind of a nerdy or not outdoorsy sort of television personality, but everybody has a baseline of athleticism when they get on the show. So, they'll all run across the finish line and they'll all make it eventually. You want something that's going to be fair, for men and for women, for young or for old, depending on the challenge. There's lots of instances where the tribe can select one or two people to put in a clutch position to do some sort of task. So then you have the best against the best.
So how do you ensure it's fair? Because most of them, there's mental and physical elements, but there are physical elements. So how do you ensure a physical challenge is fair? I mean, there was one season where it was old people versus young people, wasn't there?
That was Survivor Nicaragua, and they really tried to minimize the physicality in those challenges, but it didn't work really well. I don't think anybody thinks that those early challenges from Survivor Nicaragua were really great. I don't think they had a great water location. That was one of the first seasons where most of the water challenges were in a swimming pool. But it was still okay. But so how do you make it fair? It's been a process moving forward. I mean, what was it? There was a story where, I think John was on the Howard Stern show, and he was saying, listen, if you're slow, a physical challenge isn't fair, and if you're not bright, then a mental challenge isn't fair. And over the course of the whole season, it kind of evens out. But actually, if you go back and look at some of the challenges from the early seasons, there are balance challenges where it turns out that like somebody with more mass to their body is just at an absolute disadvantage. And you go back and look at it, yeah, it does turn out like the lightest person won that challenge. And so nowadays it's much more often to see if it's a challenge where you have to like support your own body weight, it's proportional to each contestant. So that's, I think, a really a classic solution that helps make it more fair than it once was. But ultimately, it's like it's the challenges can favor almost anyone.
I remember the first time Johnny Fairplay was on Survivor, and he lost that endurance challenge to that older woman whose name I can't recall.
Are you talking about the Scoutmaster, Lillian Morris?
Yes, I am. Like, it was down to the three of them, and it was like an endurance challenge, and he was like the young man, and he lost to like an older woman, and it was very embarrassing for him.
Yeah, he couldn't close. It's a tough position to be in. You're almost in front of the jury, and you can't close that final challenge. That's the way it goes sometimes.
I feel like Survivor seasons, even though this is not really front and center, they kind of have a theme that's based on the location. Like, there's certain motifs that they'll keep using. Does that go into the challenges?
Some of my favorite seasons fit that description. When you think back to the first Rupert season, which was all pirate.
Oh boy, do I remember the first Rupert season. I remember Rupert.
And you had the piracy through line of season 7, Pearl Islands, is one of the things that makes it such a classic season. And to the same extent, I liked the way they did it with the temples were well integrated in Guatemala, and a lot of the Chinese iconography in the China season, and the World War II Battle of Palau. I love those flavors to those seasons. In fact, Jeff, this idea I think is too hot for TV. I think it's a little too nutty, and it's probably its own show on some other network. But I was like, oh, wouldn't it be amazing if it was in Argentina and it was Cowboy Survivor, and the tribal council set is covered wagons, and their buffs are bandanas, and the challenges would feature like a lot of horseshoes. I would love to see that.
Why in Argentina?
Oh, it's like the gaucho kind of thing. Like, you've got to give it some sort of... or perhaps gauchos are not from Argentina. I don't know.
I was afraid that was a stupid question. I have no idea. I don't know anything about Argentina, I'm afraid.
No, I don't find it to be stupid.
I know more about season 7 of Survivor.
Got a deep bench knowledge of Survivor trivia across the seasons, but world geography and cultures is not a very strong category for me. Oh, well.
Do you at all have to calibrate the difficulty of the challenges? Are you at all worried this one's too easy, this one's too hard, they'll just run right through this? And how do you do that?
Again, that is an on-set problem. That's where they build and they play test this stuff. But definitely, if you can look at a challenge and right away see some sort of way that makes it really unfair, then that can get disqualified. But a lot of times it takes the opportunity for somebody to play it. It's a whole other world that nowadays, and this is really just true in the last 2 years or so, 2 or 3 years, there's always 3 tribes on Survivor. Whereas for most of the time, it's been 2 tribes. And, like season 8 had 3 tribes. And then there wasn't another 3 tribe season until Survivor Philippines, which was in like the mid-20s somewhere. And now it happens quite often. And it changes what kind of challenge you can do. Because, give you just for instance, tug-of-war challenges, which usually are not so great. When they happen on Survivor, a lot of times they turn into a pretty bogged down stalemate kind of situation. That happened on Survivor Guatemala, which I'm referencing a lot today, and to an extent on Survivor Philippines. But a tug-of-war for 3 tribes, there isn't really a game like that. It's anything that's a combat challenge where they're going to be like one-on-one, whether they're sumo at sea kind of situation. Like there's never been a 3-tribe combat challenge on Survivor, and it's because it's kind of hard. Speaking as someone who's tried, it's hard to think of them and make them fair and make them good. So that's something that we have to get to doing a lot more of. I'll be curious to see, if it's something that they come up with, on the beach, and then we get to see it played. That would be great.
You keep saying this one's good or this one wasn't as good. Like, what makes a challenge good in your mind? Like, what are the qualities of a good challenge?
What it always comes to, I mean, it's so subjective, of course, because like, what is a good Survivor player? What is a good symphony? Like, I have my tastes like anybody else. But I think broadly speaking, if you're looking for some kind of rule of thumb, I think if it makes for good TV, then it's a good challenge. And a lot of times that involves a come from behind. Because there's an intrinsic human element that makes us root for an underdog. And this has been like recreated in laboratory environments where we'll just always favor an underdog. So if someone comes from behind over the course of a 7-minute competition, it's thrilling. And kind of like I was talking about before, like great athletes, like watching them do their thing. You know, I've never watched the Olympics. In my whole life, I haven't seen 1 minute of Olympics programming, and I don't watch any of the professional sports teams. And I know that makes me pretty out of step with like the majority in most instances. I feel like it's just something that I'm missing. It just doesn't,
yeah, sports are popular. Sports are popular.
Sports are way popular, and my wife has opened me up to going to a ball game with a company, friends, family, and having a great time. And if the ball game is on the TV at the party, it's fine. But Survivor is an opportunity to watch sort of athleticism and triumph over adversity that I think is the same thing that makes a lot of people tune in to watch the Olympics, just in a different context. To me, really, it's more inspiring because there aren't really subjective challenges where some judges say how good a job you did, like there are in some Olympic events. And also, they aren't, the contestants on Survivor are also sort of, they're inspirations because they're the triumph of the human spirit. They're able to achieve these feats of athletic and mental, ability while sleeping on the ground and eating very little. So, and it could be like your postman or your neighbor or your aunt who's there on the show. That's what does it for me. I like challenges that surprise me. I like challenges. I like challenges where people like me can do well. In Survivor Token Chains, there's this, smarty pants contestant, Steven. He's a New York guy, and he writes speeches for political consultants, and he goes out there to show, what his own political skills are like, and he does quite well. And he wins this challenge where everybody first has to go across a bunch of balance beams, and he's dead last. And then he has to memorize a row of mathematical equation symbols in order, then return across the balance beam and use those symbols in the correct order to complete a math equation. And he went from last to first. He won the competition. He got to wear the special immunity necklace. And so that's somebody who I identified with and felt empathy towards, like a king in a tragedy. And when he won, it was great. Anybody who's a Survivor nerd who's on Survivor, when they win a challenge, when Rob Sesternino won individual immunity in Survivor the Amazon, or every time John Cochran won. That's something that also tickles me and pushes my buttons. Those are among the things that I think makes a good Survivor challenge. But some people don't like them at all. So there's a range of opinions.
So the comebacks are something I feel like you've mentioned a few times, and of course is something I remember about Survivor. Is a comeback something you can engineer into the game design, or do you just have to hope that's how it goes?
You have to hope that's how it goes.
Right.
And a lot of times it does. And then other times it doesn't even come into play. And so sometimes there's stuff that's physically built into the competition that doesn't make it to TV at all. So, you might see him go across the rope bridge, and the next thing they're doing the ring toss. But what you didn't see is that there was a whole cart that they had to build to get across this ravine. And it was just like, nothing really happened during the cart building and going across the ravine. So we just, cut forward. And if you watch really close in some of the helicopter shots, then maybe you might be able to see a part of the challenge that didn't get used, but that doesn't happen very often. But it's all, they can take the competition and they can edit it to make it look like it's close. And that's fine. And I love that because the goal is, to make the show exciting. And so, when they can make it seem close, if it was kind of close and they can seem really close, that's great. I'm a fan.
You mentioned that this dream team, they have to do some work and adjust on set. How much of, forgetting the editing where they have to, readjust things, but how much of the plan that you guys write in LA actually gets executed in wherever they go, and how much of it are they having to readjust for whatever reason?
A lot of it changes. And that has to do so much with, like I said, play testing this stuff. Like if you play a game, I remember an instance where the crew told me, that when they came back, that there was a challenge that was going to be really close to the end, and they tried it, and it involved balancing, and there were some horizontal ropes, and they were like, well, first of all, it completely favored upper body strength, which means that it's not fair in a men versus, if there's men and women contestants, because just the baseline upper body strength is more so for men. So you can never have a challenge where everybody hold on to the monkey bars with your hands as long as you can. That would be just too unfair. And not only that, they found out that it was dangerous. There was a catching your windpipe on a rope as you fell kind of hazard. So I was like, okay, well, this is unsafe and unfair. So it goes in the trash, and we've got about 3 days to make something new. So what have we got? And they used some elements that they had, like a teeter-totter and some cards for a house of cards. And there was a combination hold a teeter tower steady while you're building a house of cards on it challenge. And it was freaking great because two of the contestants got into an altercation while the challenge was underway. So it was a fun game to watch anyway. And then it just so happened some important story or the reality, as it's called, took place during the challenge. So it was great across the board. But to how much changes on location? A lot. And so whether it's something wasn't fair, wasn't safe, whether a location proved to be not as advantageous as they thought it was going to be. And there are a number of reasons why that those cards on the wall change after they're on location. But my job is to help fill the wall to an extent where it's good enough to then get on a plane and start playtesting stuff and moving forward with those designs. And then, there's so many things that change, especially because these days they're filming 2 seasons back to back. And so you might have a challenge in the second season that you're going to film sequentially that's a variation on something you do in the first season, and then it has either it's so great that you decide you want to move it up, and so it's going to come earlier in the second season, or that it doesn't go quite the way you want, and so you scrap it, and now you need something else that was in the standby list to move it into the second season. All these things, end up in such a way that when the show airs, I'm like America. I tune in and I find out what happens, and I like it that way. And sometimes to the point where it'll be next time on Survivor, and my wife will say, that looked like they were playing a challenge that you made up, and I was like, maybe they are, and then we tune in next week and they are, and I'm like, that's great. I love that.
You mentioned how the House of Cards or whatever, it can inspire a fight, and that's interesting because Survivor, the challenges are not really, like we said, the challenges aren't really the overall game. It's not the game show. So in the challenges, is there any concern or any design put towards, kind of exposing the dynamics of the group a little bit, maybe making people fight, or not even necessarily making people fight, that sounds nasty, but just exposing those dynamics? Let's leave it at that one.
It's become so clear, and it became really early on, that you don't have to engineer anything. You just put them next to each other, and half of you are wearing a red piece of fabric and half of you are wearing a blue piece of fabric, and you have to run, and the first person for their team to touch that tree wins it. They are already so fired up towards the other tribe that the reality happens there, and it's real simple, just to let it happen, and it's great. That said, there are instances where you engineer, whether it's they're going to be rolling this big ball down this course, but the course crisses and crosses, and so they're going to cross paths with the other tribe, and it's going to be like who's going to yield and who's going to push their way through rolling this big ball. And all of the combat challenges they do. There's a great challenge that Dan Mundy made up. It's called Kicking and Screaming, where one person from my tribe is hugging a post, and two people from the other tribe are going to run up to them and try to pull that person off the post and drag them across a line that's about 25 feet away. And the next post is somebody from the other tribe. So the first tribe that can pull a person across the line scores a point for their team. And you'll do that a bunch of times. That's so straightforward, and it's so simple, and it's so classic, and it's a great game.
I'm starting to get a good sense of what a good challenge looks like, the qualities of a good challenge. With that in mind, what are some of your favorite all-time Survivor challenges? And I'm going to ask for one you are not involved in and one you were involved in.
I think one of the best challenges. Oh, okay. All right. There is a great individual immunity challenge in Survivor Samoa, the 19th season, that's called Square Peg Round Hole, that they've never done since, although I keep asking them to. And it involves pushing. It's like a race. You push a funny shaped wooden block into a hole that has a matching shape, and when you do, it's going to cause another piece to fall out into a trough. Pick that piece up and push it into a hole. It's a little bit like the game Perfection, but played sequentially instead of simultaneously, and it's a really cool mind fry. The woman who won it did it like she had done it before. And this other woman, when the game finished, she was like still holding the first piece in her hand, just looking at it and blinking. So that was kind of comical. So yeah, that Square Peg Round Hole, I love that challenge. And there's some drama that plays out in the beginning of that challenge as well. So that one's worth watching. And then something I contributed that I was proud of was so far as I know, I was the first person to come into the room and say, let's have them do something with their feet. And I did a little sketch of a sort of a dexterity challenge where you're sitting on a stool and you're unlooping and unspooling some rope with your feet. And then the finished version then went on to have building towers of blocks and putting a flag on it, all with the feet. And it's a crazy core workout, which is what kind of made me think it would be interesting to give to the contestants. And the woman who won that challenge, it was her only individual immunity win, and she wasn't strong in any other challenge. And then she won an individual immunity, which is really hard to do. There are contestants who've played the game 2 and 3 times and who've never won an individual immunity because it's just really tough. It puts you in a very special subset of Survivor contestants. And so, it didn't have a huge impact on the end of the game, but that one cycle where it's like, wow, she won individual immunity. Okay, so I guess it can be anyone. And then the next couple of moves were. It was cool, and then they reused that challenge on a recent All-Star season, so that's a nice thing to see as well.
Right, that means you must have done something right.
I was part of it. Yes, that's right.
What about another, kind of hallmark of a good Survivor season is the disgusting food challenges? Is that like a separate day you break apart? Like, all right, Thursdays when we're going to brainstorm disgusting things to make them shove in their mouths.
The best thing to do with the gross food challenge is just to leave it alone. Either do it or don't do it. But it's every time there's tries to be some kind of wrinkle or twist to it, it ends up not playing out. And so that's, even though there have been attempts to build a better mousetrap, it's kind of like, okay, you know what we're going to do with the food challenge? We're going to leave it alone. Like, there was this one notorious instance where you had 2 contestants and they were both having to eat the balut, which is kind of the best gross food that's found across every culture where they shoot Survivor, as it happens. And there was, it's James versus Denise. and James had made up his mind that he wanted to lose because he wanted his tribe to go to tribal council, but Denise was just not capable of eating the food. So they both sat there, and this time went by, and it was really lame because it was the game point. And we're like, okay, let's go back to the way that we've done the food challenge before. Let's get it right.
You know, talking about eating the disgusting food and sleeping on the ground, it makes me wonder, you probably can't because it's a game show to some degree and you've been involved in it now, but if you could, would you want to actually be on Survivor?
I don't know that I'm cut out for the elements and I'm not an athlete. I love to play some kind of strategy game like the kind you see on reality TV. But I don't know that I necessarily want to be an on-air personality for that. Maybe I do, maybe not.
Oh, I wasn't even thinking about the fact that you're actually going to be on TV. I'm just talking about purely showing up and playing the game. I guess they'd probably tape it and air it, though.
I mean, well, but that's the thing is, like, I'm lucky enough in my community of games and game players here in Los Angeles that I do get to play games like that. I played Survivor, and I played The Mole. There's a guy here, Matt Pavlovich, who produces these games just kind of for his friends and people in his circle and in the know. And, we'll spend a day doing his game. And I love it.
That does sound fun. These challenges, something that always struck me, something I was just like thinking about watching the challenges on Survivor, and something I really remember is when Probst would go through the explanation, and some of these challenges, they've got like 5 or 6 different segments, and I'd be like, wait, what? Like, I'd have no idea, and you just wait and watch them play it. 2 questions about that. One, the explanation for how to play. Do you guys write that ahead of time, or is that something they come up with on set?
I guess I've heard people say that before, but it's sort of hard. That I get that some people find the challenges confusing, but ultimately you're just watching some teams compete, and they're going from a thing to a thing, and he always shouts out when somebody wins.
I've never not been able to follow a challenge, but sometimes after I hear him explain it, I know I couldn't go participate in it. Yeah. And so, after that intro patter, which is prepared, he's in addition to being host, he's a executive producer on the show, or maybe he's the executive producer. I should know, but I don't. He supervises what his patter is. But then after that, they actually walk the contestants through the course from beginning to end, and show them you're going to go around this curve, you're going to go up and over this thing, and you can't go down here, you have to go up and over. Any questions, everybody feel like they get it and take as much time as they need so that when they run it, they don't have to go, stop, you went under the thing, everybody back to the starting line, because that sucks. So to avoid that, they really take them by the hand and show them, everything they need to know. Yeah, that was going to be my other question, was like, does someone stop and give them an opportunity to ask questions?
Yeah, but they don't hear that, because why would we want
that would be terrible television. All right, so I have a sense of what you've done on Survivor. I'm curious, like, what... making challenges for Survivor seems like the dream for a games maker. Like, what else do you want to do? Like, are there any other goals you've set for yourself as a games maker?
What's on my agenda in the near future is, from a game creation perspective, is a couple of things. I'm going to move away from LA, but before I do, I'm taking some meetings around town about some ideas for TV. And my experience has taught me that, there's very, very, at every step of the way, even if you have an original idea that's on TV, there's very little reason to be optimistic about keeping your idea there or getting on TV in the first place. So, but before I leave town, to go move to be closer to our families in the Bay Area, I'm going to try to take some meetings around town and see if anybody wants to help me put my original game ideas on TV. And then we're working on a couple of exciting new opportunities for our company to sell to clients, to help give them an exciting team building day, and also give back a little bit to the community. That's our new offering is going to be coming in this pretty soon, like at the end of March. will be the Superhero Academy that we're going to be launching. And it's your opportunity to train up to be a superhero and prepare some video care packages for some young people in need, while also using your new super skills to defeat bad guys and have a good time with your coworkers in the park. And then we are also working on a Halloween offering. We have a idea for a haunted house that has never been done before, and so we are trying to find the right house to haunt. Much like an actual ghost, we have some unfinished business. But those are some prospects that I'm excited about, and hopefully playing some more of these games. I have a club here called Playfolk. That's something else people can check out. We're at playfolk.org. If anybody listening is in the LA area or has friends in the LA area who might be interested in this kind of thing, we get together once a month and play rare and unusual games. In March, I'm hoping to play The Lost Sport of Atlantis, which I read about in Jane McGonigal's book, Reality is Broken. And I'll need to brush up on it if we're going to play it in March, but my understanding is it's some sort of blindfolded maze game that you play by humming, and the maze is made of a human wall that's part of a team getting a blindfolded person through a maze. I don't know, I've never played it, and that's the whole point, is I want to get together with people who are interested in games like that one that you can't play just any old place, and give it a try, because it's not like a book or a movie that you can just enjoy by yourself. You got to get enough good sports together in one place to play a game like that. That's what I like.
And how can people follow all of these different Myles efforts? Where can they find you online?
My Twitter presence is on fleek, so you can find me at Myles Nye, and my name is Mylesnye. My first name is Miles, like Miles Davis, but spelled with a Y, and my last name is Nye, like Bill Nye the Science Guy. At Myles Nye. I have 2 Y's in my name and 2 Y's in my Twitter handle.
You know, I'm looking at my notes. I want to make sure I covered everything. I got one filed under miscellaneous that I could not work in anywhere else, but I would be remiss if I let you go without asking you. As a games designer, have you seen the Hunger Games movies? And if so, or read the books, I guess there were books too. And if so, I'm just wondering, what do you think of the design of the Hunger Games as a game?
My wife and I listened to all 3 Hunger Games books as audiobooks, and then with like earbud splitters on some flights and road trips. And then we went to go see the movies, and just saw the final one pretty recently, and pretty joyless movie going, I'm sorry to say. I think when I'm picturing these dystopian scenarios in books, actually looking at them is this is not my idea of a fun night out at the movie. So I finished the Hunger Game movie sort of out of a sense of obligation, but didn't really leave the theater whistling a merry tune by any means. And the movie sort of peaked for me with Seneca Crane's beard. He's the game designer in the first movie.
Sure, Wes Bentley.
Seneca Crane's beard was the star of that movie from my perspective. No, I mean, the Hunger Games, they're great books. I really like the books. The games are wildly unfair because the game masters can just push a button and cause the thing next to you to explode and kill you.
So not a great game, kind of like Quidditch. Good reading, not necessarily great game design.
The best... it's for some great fiction reading about game design. There's a Japanese manga called The Liar Game. That is better. It's so uncommon to find any game in any work of fiction that isn't secretly nefarious. It's very uncommon for anyone to play a game of any kind, be it Tron or the Battle Royale, the game with Michael Douglas. Like, there's always something menacing about it. It's very uncommon that people play a game just kind of like it's rare to find a movie set in the future that's not dystopian. I have more optimistic views about the future and about the future of games.
Yeah, well, I guess that makes games like everything else, right? Because a movie about a doctor certainly doesn't represent actual medicine. So it's good that games aren't excluded from Hollywood's kind of reality distortion field. It just means they're real.
I think that there's so many more different kinds of doctors across different movies, whereas games and movies are a lot more homogenous.
It's true. Well, maybe we'll get there one day.
That's still a diversity problem in Hollywood.
Yeah, that's the real diversity, right? Well, Myles, thank you so much for coming by, talking about Survivor and games tonight.
Thank you for having me, Jeff. It's been a treat.
All right, people, I hate to admit it, but that is the end of another episode of the Jeff Rubin Show. I will be back in 2 weeks. I'm not quite sure what the episode will be about, but we got some irons in the fire. Something's cooking, and it's gonna be good, and it'll be up in 2 weeks. You will be the first to know about it. If you follow me at Jeff Rubin Show on Twitter, on Facebook, on Tumblr, or any of my other various social media empires, you can get them all at jeffrubin.com, as well as every episode of this podcast. And I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what you think of the show. I would love your suggestions for guests, for future episodes. Oh, I know exactly who's going to be on the next episode. Wait just a second. Next episode of this podcast, we are going to be talking to someone who just turned in one of the greatest Wheel of Fortune performances of all time. I would encourage you, between now and the next episode of the show, go look online for Robert's incredible game, Wheel of Fortune. That is what Wheel of Fortune themselves called it when they posted the video. The video is only a minute and a half long and showcases just how amazing this guy's night was on Wheel of Fortune. Watch the video, because next episode of the show, we're going to learn how he did it. And that will be on the Jeff Rubin Show. I can't wait. I'll see you there. But for now, bye.
That was a HeadGum podcast.